22. I'm delighted to say Stephen Kisbey-Green, SKG, is with us this morning. Good morning to you, Stephen. How are you?
Morning, Jigger. Thanks, yourself.
One of the things that's happened that we see in the papers this morning is that the URC are now talking about copying the trial that's ongoing in the Southern Hemisphere when it comes to the 20-minute red card rule. And this is coming, it seems like, in a very separate conversation from we need to continually enforce the rulings and make sure that we change people's behaviour when it comes to tackle height and red card. And I'm like, these conversations don't seem to be particularly joined up here. So first off, and this does seem like it's going to happen, does it?
It unfortunately does look like they're going to at least trial it again. It's been working in, this isn't working, it's been trialled in Super Rugby at the moment, and nobody seems to be talking about it over there as being a huge failure, which is strange because it does definitely look like a failure from the outside. But yeah, the World Rugby are definitely looking at trialling it on the Northern Hemisphere and actually an international window this summer as well.
It's going to happen in the URC. If it happens in the URC, it's going to have to happen for the whole season, right?
Yeah, it'll be the full thing, and it could even potentially spill over into the Champions Cup, depending on how it works in the URC, because it would be weird if it went URC and then didn't go Champions Cup, because then you got Leinster and Ulster and Connacht and Munster all playing one set of rules in one competition at the same time as playing a completely different set of rules. So it'll spill over. The trial looks like it's going to be more realistic and more widespread as the thing goes on.
What's the push behind this? Why are they doing this?
I think the idea is there's the fan backlash of red cards ruin games. It's the idea that once a team goes down to 14 men, or 14 men or 14 women or whatever it is, that the teams themselves can't compete, so it becomes a bit of a farce. And just look at the Italian game in the Six Nations. It wasn't the best of spectacles, but again, you also look at the opposition. So I think that's where it's coming from. It wants to try and keep the competitive nature of matches, especially when teams go down to 14 men. But that kind of rings a bit hollow if you look at what happened this past weekend in the Champions Cup. I mean, there was 5 red cards throughout the entire Champions Cup, which is a fairly ill-disciplined weekend, let's be honest. But of those 5, only one of the matches was actually detrimentally affected by the red card. Sale and Bristol was probably one of the best matches of the weekend, and Sale had 14 men for 55 minutes. So the idea that red cards ruin matches is actually just ridiculous.
Well, what's the point of the red card?
It's supposed to be to try and force, as far as I can understand, it's supposed to be to try and force teams or players to reassess how they do things and actually punish them for doing bad things. So, for example, right now, as you alluded to, the idea is we want to protect players' safety, and especially in the light of a lot of the early onset dementia cases coming on and the issues with concussion, etc., etc. The idea at the moment is to punish people for high tackles. But now, if you're going to effectively reward a team to go back to 15 men after 20 minutes, sure, the player themselves can't come back on, but the team is not punished. The team is not putting any pressure on that player to do better. It's weird, and it doesn't force coaches to instill a lower tackle height in the training sessions. It doesn't do anything really to try and, as you say, it goes against what World Rugby claimed to want to do with the tackle height.
Okay, so there's a story in the back of the Irish Independent today, and I suspect it's in some of the other papers as well. The head of the URC, their head of match officials, is a South African. His name is Tappe, T-A-P-P-E, Henning?
Yeah, Tappe Henning, yeah.
Tappe Henning, right. So he took the role on last December, and he says that they are going to look into the 20-minute red card. That it is still on the agenda. He's also hopeful of having neutral TMOs, which would be a good step forward for the competition. Just, not suggesting anything untoward is happening, but, it's always good to be above suspicion. And he's saying they're open to this idea. But look, in fairness, it's a nuanced answer. The other side of it is that if you want to change player behaviour around headshots and things, the punishment must fit the crime. How do you change behaviour with soft decisions? That's the question, right? Because we're seeing too many soft decisions still where there is head-on-head contact, and instead of just going, I don't really care about the mitigation, or I don't really care about the intent, or I don't really care about the damage. It's like, that's head on head. There's a tiny percentage risk that you took. That's too much risk because it's leading to early onset dementia. These things are linked. So you lower your head height or you get a red card. And it's automatic red card. As opposed to this, we're all sitting looking at the video going, it's head and head contact, that's a red card. It's not a red card. No, it is a red card. It's like, no, all head on head contact is a red card, irrespective of whether or not it's accidental. You just do that, and then maybe the behaviour changes, because nothing has changed the behaviour so far.
True, but as Andy Dunn actually was on the show last night, he alluded to, it's not so much a lack of willingness from the players per se. It's more like these things that can often happen accidentally. Like, look at Jamison Gibson Park's yellow card against Connacht, where I personally think it should have been a red card. I don't agree with the idea that he fell into him, because that's a bit of a rubbish answer. But at the same time, it was being tackled already, and Gibson Park didn't lunge towards the player with the shoulder, so it wasn't a deliberate head-on-head.
No.
So I agree, it should have been a red card, but at the same time, it's not so much a behavioural thing, it's more of an accidental thing, and that's what Andy Dunn was getting on about. It's not like the tip tackle where it's a conscious decision to tip the player and drive them into the ground. These things can happen on the rugby field, and a lot of the time they are rugby incidents. But at the same time, if you're claiming that you want to protect players right now and in the future, if there is an accidental head contact, you kind of have to give some form of punishment for it. Yeah,
I think that actually just the red card would eventually have an impact. Where the other thing is the 20-minute red card, and it's coming through here on the comments already. The 20-minute red card is absolutely ridiculous. Everybody I speak to in real life, in real day-to-day life, agrees. Says Jessica, and Fergus says if red cards ruin matches, maybe players should stop doing things that result in red cards. I mean, they haven't fixed the loophole. They haven't fixed the rules that caused the incident in the Italy game, and that is continuously happening. It's like the people who are in charge of rugby cannot get out of their own way. Too many Billy Big Bollocks is the issue here, that they just can't have a conversation and go, what's going to make the sport better? This is going to make the sport better, and if there's a problem with it, we'll fix it. But when the problem emerges, it's like, can't fix that now. We made our decision. That's our bad. We've got to lie in it.
I don't actually think, though, that there was an issue with that rule that's going down to 13 men with Italy.
There is. You're punishing two people for the same incident. You can't do that.
No, but you're not.
You are. You actually, what happened was, two people ended up not playing for the same team because one player got red carded. That's what happened.
Yeah, because the team...
You're qualifying it now.
No, I'm explaining why I don't think it's why I don't think it's an issue. The incident in that case was a bit of an overstepping of the well, not overstepping. It was following the laws exactly.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
But
the law is bullshit.
No, well, no, because it's not, though, because you want to ensure that a team is
not going to cheat.
The team's not going to cheat, but also you want to ensure that scrums are competitive but also safe. So if you can't field a full front row, and there's no specified front row player that can fill in for that role, and safely. And I don't know if you've been in the front row, but I know it's a
long time ago. Yes, as an under 14. So I would say it's not quite the same as the front rows you were in. But go on.
No, it's madness. But I played all three in high school. I didn't play pro, but yeah, played all three positions in high school. And unless you're trained how to do it in each individual position.
Sure, it's very risky.
It's very risky. Now, if say for example you are.
Can I just make the point? I understand the point you're going to make, but if a team has had a player red carded for an incident, right?
Yeah.
Then in that instance, they're already being punished, and so it's not like they've had the red card on purpose to go to uncontested scrums. It's an unintended consequence, and so double punishment in all sports has eventually, even football, like the slowest, stupidest rule makers in the history of all sports, finally caught up with the idea that a red card and a penalty. Do we do both at the same time? Oh no, hang on a second. That's ruining the game.
But then at the same time, why do we give red cards or yellow cards at the same time we give penalty tries?
Now you almost never see that. If you think about it, most teams are kind of glad that the try got scored because it prevents the red or the yellow card. You very rarely see the double punishment of the yellow and the try being scored? Occasionally you do.
In the Northern Hemisphere. In Southern Hemisphere, it's very often given where...
What can I say? We're just better up here, Stephen.
It makes me really irritated. There's two separate rules for
it doesn't
Northern
make any
and Southern
sense.
Hemisphere.
Okay. We got sidetracked there. So what else were we going to talk about?
Well, yeah. So
Leinster have been they're sending their squad to South Africa for their mini tour. How is this going down in South Africa? How are they being perceived?
Well, yeah. Do you know who's in the squad? Do you want me to read through the list?
Just in case anybody's missed this, maybe the list of players who aren't in the squad would have been. Go on, yeah.
I think that list is too long. So you got Ed Byrne, Peter Dooley, Michael Milne, Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, John McGee, James Tracy, Vak Abdaladze, Michael Alatoa, Thomas Clarkson, Brian Deeney, Jack Dunn, Josh Murphy, Martin Mooney, Rhys Ruddock, who's captain, Sean O'Brien, Scott Penny, Max Deegan, Alex Soroka, Cormac Foley, Nick McCarthy, Harry Byrne, David Hawkshaw, Tommy O'Brien, Rob Russell, Kieran Frawley, Rory O'Loughlin, Jamie Osborne, Adam Byrne, Chris Cosgrove, and Max O'Reilly. And the immediate thing that stands out to me there is it is basically a bunch of children. With a few Irish internationals thrown in.
Pretty hairy children who you wouldn't want to meet down a dark alley. But
oh no, definitely. No. I wouldn't want to come up against any of them. But when you compare the squad that's available to Leinster, this is arguably comparable to the academy team that Munster put out against the Wasps, and that was out of absolute desperation.
I do see 2/3 of the best front row in the world there. Trademark various Irish pundits in the aftermath of the first game of the Six Nations.
Yeah. So if you look at it, you got Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, Rhys Ruddock, and the two Burns. There is quite a few. There's a few players there that you'd imagine would be considered top class, but it's not the strongest side by any means. I mean, you just look at the players that aren't there. You got no Sexton, no Henshaw, no Ringrose, no Furlong, no Healy,
Flair, yeah,
no Van der Flair, no. Actually, none of the Irish back row, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a weakened team, and I'm sure the South African sides are licking their chops. They're delighted about this, right?
The sides themselves are, but the fans are not happy. They don't think that they. I'm going to preface this by saying it's not my feelings. It's not. I completely disagree with them, and it's also not the feelings of the majority of South African fans. But it's a very loud minority that think that Leinster are disrespecting both South Africa. Well, maybe not South Africa as a whole, but the South African team that they're facing, and the URC as a competition by sending the side to South Africa, because they. It seemed like either they think that they can win with this second string side, which is I think we can all agree it's a largely second string side. Either they think they can beat the best teams in South Africa with this second string side, or they literally don't care about these two games. They're happy to lose them, and they are focusing only on the Champions Cup, and that's it. Now that's the belief system of the minority of South African fans, but the loud minority.
It's very, very unlike the South African rugby fans to take offence at almost nothing, is it?
I mean, all fans
out of character.
All fans have their quirks.
And what happens now if Leinster go down with this team and beat your teams?
Highly possible, but not likely. If that makes any sense. The Sharks are the only team so far in South Africa on South African soil that have lost a match. And they surprisingly, I think it was Edinburgh that they lost to, which was a big shock. I would have expected the Lions to have lost to Munster, to be honest. And that was actually a fairly well stocked Munster side as well. It wasn't full strength, but it was 80 to 90% there. So it's possible, but I don't think it's going to happen. The Sharks have learned from their mistakes against Edinburgh, and actually they've learned from all their mistakes recently, really. And the Stormers are actually on a roll, so I don't see it happening. But you can understand why Leinster have sent this side, because it makes sense to prioritise a knockout game as opposed to a league game. They are 10 points clear of their closest competitor on the URC.
Yeah.
So they can't afford to lose these matches, and I do think that they are going to lose these matches, whether it be with bonus points or not. I don't know.
Spread is 3 points. That's not a massive spread for people to be getting upset about. But look, I guess it does serve to offer an opportunity to speak about how the competition has been perceived by South African rugby fans and how welcome it's been, because it's been such a slow start. It's been in the works for such a long period of time. COVID interrupted. Teams got trapped down there. It was generally conceived, or generally considered to have been...
I take offence to trapped down there.
A bit of a disaster. couldn't get out.
I mean, there are worse places in the world than to be stranded in Cape Town.
It's true. They weren't allowed to leave their hotels, were they?
You could still see sun. When was the last time you saw sun in Dublin?
This morning. It's a bright sunny day as I cycled across the Liffey.
I was
miserable
when I did.
So, how has the tournament been perceived? Are South African rugby fans on board with this tournament?
It's mixed results, to be honest. The URC is the biggest competition South Africa can take part in at the moment, because obviously it replaced Super Rugby, and at the moment, and Super Rugby and the Currie Cup were the only two competitions South African teams were involved in. And South Africa, historically, the biggest competition should be the Currie Cup, because it's the oldest professional rugby. Well, no, not professional. It's the oldest competitive rugby tournament in the world. That hasn't really changed too much, and it's got so much history behind it in South Africa. However, with the sort of development of the Pro 12, Pro 14, Super Rugby, etc. Super 12, Super 14, and then on Super Rugby, it kind of took a back burner, and the international window kind of took over. So a lot of the time, the Currie Cup was for the second string teams and development squads.
Yeah.
So that's why now that's where it's become, where it's no longer that prestige that it used to have. So a lot of fans are like, okay, cool, we want to be competitive in the Currie Cup, but we don't really care. That's for like the Griquas and the Eastern Province and the Pumas and them. The big franchises, they'll focus on the international tournaments like URC or Super Rugby, and it started off not going too well, because obviously South African fans, they want what they're used to. They're used to playing the New Zealand teams. They're used to losing to the New Zealand teams, and they're happy enough to lose to the New Zealand teams as long as they can compete against what they see as the best teams in club rugby, which a lot of South Africans still think are in New Zealand. They don't necessarily think that the English, the Premiership, which a lot of people over here think is Premiership, is the best club competition in the world. Top 14 fans think the French rugby is the best in the world. It's like South Africans think that the best club competitions is in New Zealand. They want to play against them, but they also just want to see South African rugby play internationally as well. So it's not like they don't like the URC.
It's all they've got.
It's all they've got, and the issue is they haven't had live rugby that they've been able to go to stadiums for like the past 2.5 years. Okay,
and I think next year is really when we can judge exactly how well or otherwise this experiment of the South African teams moving to Europe has worked, because the South African teams, on the basis of this year's URC, will qualify for the Heineken Champions Cup next year. And as it stands, 3 of the South African provinces would be, it's not finished yet, but 3 of the teams would be qualified for next year's Champions Cup. I suspect that would change the tenor of things.
Yeah, I think they do want to. I mean, to be able to play the likes of a top tier Toulouse team with Intermac and Dupont and all of them in it would be amazing for the lot of South African fans. And then just the idea of winning more silverware is just any potential to win silverware South African fans will want. And also the fact that it's now a third competition that South African teams will be playing for is something that they've never had before. So it's new, it's nuanced, it's interesting. So that automatically will give South African fans something to play for, or something to cheer for. And then the players themselves, even though South African squads are not actually as bloated as Northern Hemisphere squads are, because financially they just aren't. They don't have the funds to pay their best players, so a lot of them get shipped overseas.
Is there a possibility that the increased profile of the Champions Cup might lead to more revenue and therefore allow for some more of those best South African players to stay, or is that pie in the sky?
Completely pie in the sky, purely based on the fact that the South African rand is weak. You cannot, you can't really argue that any increased revenue will make no difference whatsoever, because the South African franchise will only be paying in rands, and you can't compete with the pound and the euro, or even and the Japanese leagues at the moment, which a lot of South African rugby players are going to. Largely because it's actually slightly softer. I don't want to, it's not like, I'm not saying it's soft, but it's slightly softer than Europe or South Africa. A lot of South African fans, or a lot of South African players, like to take that bit of a sort of 6 months or a 3 month palate cleanser in Japan to get them. It's sort of like an off season, but it's not really an off season. So they keep fit, but they don't get the heavy hits that they would get every week in the URC or the Champions Cup or South Africa or whatever.
DLN has gone to Japan, we think. Is that the general consensus in South Africa?
That's the story, yeah. It's looking likely that he's going to Japan.
And would he go for a couple of seasons, or would it be like? So when you say it's just a couple of months, what like?
So on rare occasions, South Africans stay there like quite permanently, like Franco Mostert and Crocker Smith. They're both are sticking around for quite a while, but for the vast majority of them go for about a 3 or 4 month stint. Lukhanyo he's there for 6 months, and then he's back in the Sharks, and which is weird that he kind of left mid-season as well. I found that interesting. And
so, not to individualise it, but for any of the players who go there, what kind of money are they making compared to how much they would make in Europe or?
I don't know the exact figure because I don't think Japan published those figures exactly, but you can argue it's about twice as much as they would make in South Africa.
Right. Okay. And then you can go back and do whatever you want, and so it's hard to disagree at professional sports people who are risking life and limb for making money. But especially if the red card rule is going to allow them to be hit head high repeatedly. Yeah. Okay. And then the last thing is the I don't know who floated the idea, but the suggestion was that the final for this year's URC could actually be in South Africa, on South African soil, to try and bed the competition in. And I presume this would be very welcome from South African fans. Yeah, you'd hope. The idea is they want to try and fill stadiums, and they want to try and, as you say, like get South African fans to wedded to this idea. They want to see the best players play in South Africa. Now, Leinster's not doing any favours by not sending their best players to South Africa right now. So, and so far, no Northern Hemisphere team has sent their best team to South Africa yet. They've all sent slightly weakened sides. Interesting to see how Connacht get on when they have their full team out. No, they're leaving 2 or 3 of their players that are not continuing on next year. Yeah. So, and I would consider those first string players. Okay, fair enough. So they're not, again, they're not like no Sammy Arnold. That's but yeah, it'll be well received if it is on South African soil. It'll be better received if a South African is in the final, because if it's, say, hypothetically Leinster versus Munster, which is technically possible, if it's Leinster versus Munster, I don't see it getting a massive crowd. Not that South Africans don't want to watch high quality rugby like that. It's just nobody wants to watch teams completely alien match played. It was Perpignan played whoever it was in the European Cup final in Dublin in the mid-noughties, and nobody went to it. It was, I think, 9,000 people at Lansdowne Road or something ridiculous like that. There is a slight difference, though, that a lot of the European teams have a lot of South Africans in them, like Dallin de Achilles Neyman, Jean Klein, even though he's technically Irish. But yeah, like a lot of South Africa, a lot of the European teams have South Africans in them, so there is something to bring South Africans into those teams. Like, they'll want to support Damien Diallender, but again, it's not like all of their players are homegrown and they're all like, come on, there is a bit of tribalism going on there. Like, Bulls supporters only support the Bulls. Okay, and Leinster have been winning friends and influencing fans in South Africa by not sending their best players down and then saying, no, we do not want the final in South Africa. That seems like an unfair thing to happen. Yeah, I mean, Leo Cullen, when his exact words were, it's a tricky one. Probably for the final piece, you have to earn the right. That would be my opinion. So basically, he wants the top ranked team to be at home, which makes complete sense. Yeah, that's how they do it in a lot of sports. And maybe just announce at the start of the year the final is going to be here, irrespective of the 2 teams in it. But like, it doesn't. I don't think that actually makes sense to have a neutral. Maybe you could do home and away. We see the 2-legged finals making a lot of sense in or 2-legged games making a lot of sense in Europe when the 2 teams of similar standing. All right, Stephen. So. big fans of Leinster in South Africa and no fan of the 20-minute rule.
Pretty much, yeah.
Stephen Kisbey-Green, thanks very much for that.
Cheers.